Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we are sharing a truly inspiring story, The Silent Hero. It's about Ethan, a boy who could not speak but proved that sometimes silence is the strongest voice. His life will teach us lessons of patience, kindness and true strength. So stay with us till the end of the video to feel the power of this emotional journey. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to our channel for more powerful and heart-touching stories. Ethan was born in a small town. Like other kids, his life was full of play, but there was one difference: he could not speak. The world had never heard his voice. In his early days, when other children shouted with joy, Ethan would only smile or use hand signs to explain himself. People in the town often said, "This boy is incomplete, what will he become?" But in Ethan's eyes, there was a light that showed he was no less than anyone else. His mother never saw his silence as weakness. She often said, "Son, not having a voice doesn't mean you can't dream. Your eyes hold stories and your heart has strength." Ethan's childhood was both hard and special. Hard because he often felt alone, special because he saw things more deeply than others. On the playground, he mostly stood quietly and watched how others fought, laughed and lost. That silence taught him that listening and watching can also be a strength. The town's teachers were surprised that Ethan understood everything without speaking. Sometimes he told stories through drawings, sometimes he showed his feelings by making lines in the sand. He had few friends, but those who knew him closely understood his heart was the biggest. One day, when the neighborhood kids were making fun of a poor beggar, Ethan stepped forward. He could not speak, but he took bread from his bag and gave it to the beggar. Tears came into the beggar's eyes. That moment made all the kids feel ashamed, and for the first time they realized Ethan's silence carried more power than words. These moments gave Ethan's childhood a different identity. The boy who could not speak began to touch people's hearts. His silence was turning into strength. Sometimes silence is deeper than words. Even without a voice, the language of the heart can say everything. The hardest part of Ethan's life was that the world never treated him like other kids. When the boys in town played, laughed and ran, they often left Ethan behind. They purposely didn't include him, thinking, how can a boy who cannot speak bring any fun? Ethan would smile while watching them, but inside an emptiness kept growing. In the evenings, when he returned home, he sat by his bedroom window and looked at the sky for a long time. He thought, if only I could find a friend who understands my silence. Someone who doesn't need words, but only the language of the heart. But most of the time, the kids in town made fun of him. One would say, "Look, he's mute." Another laughed, "He can't even express himself. How could he be our friend?" Those words pierced his heart like arrows. He never replied, but deep inside he was breaking. He felt as if a tall wall stood between him and the world, a wall that pushed him farther away from everyone. His mother often read this loneliness in his eyes. She said, "Ethan, remember, the world may ignore you, but one day your silence will give you a place higher than everyone's voices." Her words gave him comfort for a while, but the coldness of the town kept hurting him again and again. In his diary, he often drew pictures, two hands reaching out to each other, but a tall wall stood between them. That drawing became the reality of his life. One day, the town held its annual sports fair. All the kids joined the races and games, but Ethan was kept only as a spectator. He stood far away, watching everyone. When the games ended, one boy proudly walked with the winner's crown on his head. The noise of celebration drowned him in pride. But in Ethan's heart, a question rose. Is happiness only in winning? Isn't it more important to walk together with others? That was the moment Ethan decided deep inside. If the world doesn't make him a part of it, then he would become the kind of person everyone would one day recognize. His loneliness was slowly turning him stronger from within. The neglect of the world can break a person, but it can also make them. Ethan chose to turn his loneliness into strength, not weakness. If there was one person in Ethan's life who kept him from falling again and again, it was his mother. No matter what the world said, no matter if people laughed at his silence or left him behind, his mother's words always lit a light in his heart. Ethan's mother was an ordinary woman, but her heart was extraordinary. She knew her son could not express himself in words, but she could read an entire universe hidden in his eyes. When Ethan came home tired and sad, she only had to look at his face to know he had faced unkindness that day. She would gently stroke his hair and say, "Son, the words of the world are only sounds, and sounds fade with time, but the words of the heart last forever. Your heart is the purest, and that is your greatest strength." Ethan often sat with his head in his mother's lap. He told her about his day through drawings. Sometimes he drew two people separated by a wall, and sometimes he drew a lonely tree standing by itself. His mother would look at those pictures, smile, and say, "This wall will break one day, Ethan, and this lonely tree will one day give shade to an entire forest." Her faith was a ray of hope for him. Whenever the townspeople laughed at him, calling him mute or silent, he remembered his mother's words and felt stronger. He thought, if my mother believes I can do something, then I must believe it too. One evening, when some children were laughing at him, Ethan remembered his mother's words and found courage for the first time. He walked up to them and wrote a single word on paper, "Friend." The children were shocked. In that moment, their laughter faded into silence. That was the day Ethan learned that sometimes even the smallest step can bring the biggest change. His mother watched this scene from a distance, and tears filled her eyes. In her heart, she whispered, "This is my son. One day he will show the world that even silence can be the strongest voice. A mother's support is the greatest strength. When the world turns away, a mother's faith gives the courage strong enough to move mountains." Even in Ethan's silence, there was a noise inside him, a noise that could hear the pain of others. Since childhood, he saw that many children in the town were poor. Some had no books, some didn't even have proper shoes to wear. People looked down on them and ignored them, and these scenes set a fire in Ethan's heart. He wished that one day he could do something for them, but how? He couldn't even rely on words to express himself. Still, he didn't give up. He began to shape his dream through drawings. Sometimes he drew a school full of happy children. Sometimes he drew a big dining table with food for everyone. One day he showed his mother a drawing. In it, a small boy was handing out books to other children. His mother looked at the picture, smiled, and said, "Son, this is your dream, isn't it?" Ethan nodded. There was a sparkle in his eyes. For the first time, he felt that his life's purpose was not only to bear his own struggles, but also to ease the struggles of others. That moment awakened a new determination in him. He realized his silence was not a barrier, but a strength. If he couldn't speak, it didn't matter. He could show his words through his actions. From the depths of his heart, a prayer rose. "O God, give me the strength to create ease for others." This first dream became a tower of light for him. Now every step, every thought, and every prayer of his carried one purpose: to help others. That dream began to give voice to his silent life. For Ethan, going to school was the biggest test of his life. The moment he stepped into the classroom, it felt like every eye was fixed on him. Some children's eyes were full of surprise, some carried hidden mockery in their laughter, and some showed pure cruelty that struck at his silence like a question. Why can't he speak? He'll never be successful. He's just weak. He couldn't hear their words directly, but their looks, their gestures, and their laughter said everything. Inside, something broke each time. Even teachers, without realizing, sometimes kept him behind. When they asked questions, instead of giving Ethan a chance, they would choose another student. It was as if everyone had already decided that Ethan could never achieve anything. But Ethan made a promise deep inside. He would turn his silence into strength. He worked harder than anyone else. When the others played, he buried himself in books. When the class was noisy, he sat quietly, weaving bridges of dreams in his mind. One day, a school competition was announced. Every student had to memorize a written passage and then recite it before the teacher. Everyone said Ethan could never do it. Some even laughed. But Ethan didn't give up. He turned the whole passage into images in his mind. Every sentence became a picture, every word a color. And when the competition day arrived, he stunned everyone, using hand signs, the sparkle in his eyes, and words written on paper. The classroom fell silent. The same children who once laughed at him now bowed to his effort. Tears of pride filled the teacher's eyes. In that moment, Ethan realized, no matter how much the world calls you weak, the real strength lies within. And if you believe in yourself, no one can defeat you. Ethan's life felt like an endless battle. No matter how hard he worked in school, something always happened that crushed his spirit. Sometimes the kids mocked him, sometimes the teachers unknowingly left him behind. And when he returned home, he smiled in front of his mother as if nothing had happened, but inside a storm was raging. One day a group project was assigned in class. Everyone was divided into teams, but no one included Ethan. He sat alone in the corner while the other kids laughed and said, "What use is he? He can't even speak." Those words pierced his heart. That night, he sat in his room thinking maybe he really was weak, maybe his dreams and his hard work were meaningless. With tears in his eyes, he stared out the window at the sky, as if asking the stars if there was a place for him in this world. But then, his mother's words came to his mind. The mother who had always been his shield, who always told him in tough times, "Be patient, son, time heals every pain. Hard work never goes to waste." Those words entered his heart like light. He decided he would not give up. Even if people broke his heart, even if the world pushed him back, he would turn his silence into strength. The next day, he came to school with more determination than ever. When others didn't take him in their teams, he worked alone. He spent days and nights, drew pictures, prepared charts, and when he presented his project before the teacher, everyone was stunned. With pride in his voice, the teacher said, "Never think that a quiet voice means a weak heart." That day, Ethan learned that patience is not just about enduring. It is the courage that lifts you up and pushes you forward even after your heart has been broken. Most of Ethan's life was filled with taunts, loneliness, and inner battles. But one day, his life took a new turn. The day he gave support to someone else for the first time. That moment became a lifelong source of strength for him. After school, Ethan usually went home quietly. On the way, he often passed by a small park where children ran, played, shouted, and laughed. Ethan stood at a distance, watching them. His heart wished he could play too, but trapped in the walls of his silence, he remained only a spectator. One evening, as the sun was setting and the sky was painted in golden shades, Ethan saw a little boy sitting in the corner of the park, crying. The boy was alone. His clothes were covered in dirt and his hand was injured. Nobody came near him. Everyone else was busy with their own games. Ethan's feet moved toward him without thinking. A strange feeling rose in his heart. Maybe this boy was going through the same pain Ethan had felt many times in his life. Loneliness, weakness, and helplessness. He sat beside the boy. Instead of asking questions, Ethan let his silence speak through action. He took out a handkerchief from his bag, tied it around the boy's hand, and gave him his water bottle. At first, the boy looked surprised. Slowly, a faint smile appeared on his face. Then, suddenly, the boy asked, "Why did you help me? Everyone else just ignored me." Ethan only smiled in reply. His smile said everything that words could never express. For the first time, he realized his silence could comfort someone's heart. That day, he understood that being silent and being weak are not the same. Extending a helping hand to others is a strength greater than all. This moment gave him the belief that maybe his purpose in life was this: to heal someone's wound, to share someone's pain, and to lessen someone's loneliness. As he walked home, his heart felt lighter than ever. It was as if he had forgotten his own pain by becoming a reason for someone else's smile. He now knew that life is not just about drowning in your own struggles. True strength comes from supporting others. For Ethan, the moment when he first helped an injured child had changed his life forever. But the story didn't end there. That small act slowly began to open other people's eyes. The next day, when the child came to school, his parents looked for Ethan to thank him. Though Ethan couldn't reply with words, the sparkle in his eyes and his gentle smile said everything. At first, people used to ignore him. Many students even considered him weak and a burden. But from that day, a new chapter began. The little boy started sitting with him every day, and slowly other children too began finding peace in his silent company. They were surprised that Ethan could touch hearts without speaking a single word. One day in class, a girl broke her pencil. Ethan immediately placed his pencil box in front of her. Such a simple act, but it stunned everyone, because he did something that most children don't even think about. For a moment, the whole class went silent. They felt that his silence carried deeper meaning than words ever could. Even the teachers began to notice how Ethan's small gestures were creating a positive effect. He wasn't weak at all. He was like a mirror that made others see their own indifference. Slowly, change became visible. Children who once laughed at him now tried to sit beside him. Those who used to ignore him now began asking for his help. And most importantly, they realized that a person's true identity isn't measured by speech or words, but by actions and intentions. Ethan's small acts began to amaze everyone. They discovered that great deeds don't always come with noise and attention. Sometimes the quietest steps become the ones that change lives. The biggest irony of Ethan's life was that he couldn't speak, yet no voice was louder than his silence. His small acts of kindness at school, his way of supporting friends, and his constant care for others slowly turned into a story that spread throughout the entire village. At first, people looked at him with pity, but soon respect and admiration began to grow in their hearts. One day, a school event was arranged where everyone had to share their thoughts. When Ethan's name was called, people wondered, how could this be possible? But the principal said, voice doesn't only come from the tongue, it comes from actions too. That day, Ethan stood on stage. He didn't say a word. He simply wrote on his board, "Love is the greatest language." The whole hall burst into applause. Children, teachers, parents, everyone carried that moment in their hearts forever. After that, the people of the village began inviting him to gatherings and meetings. He didn't speak, but his presence itself became a message. Whenever arguments broke out and people tried to put each other down, someone would say, "Look at Ethan." Even in silence, he teaches us a living lesson. His silence forced the community to think that true strength doesn't lie in words, but in character. Children became kinder to one another, adults started helping more, and people began calling Ethan the voice of the community. He who could not speak awakened everyone. His silence became a bell that rang in every heart, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful voice is the one that is never spoken, only felt. Ethan's life suddenly turned to an unexpected crossroads. The boy who had always been there to support others, to encourage them, and to win hearts through his silence, faced an accident that not only changed his own world but shook the entire village. That day had started like any other. After school, he went with his friends to the playground. Everyone was laughing, joking, and Ethan, through his quiet presence, was spreading joy in his own way. But then, in an instant, everything changed. A car came speeding down the road, heading straight toward a group of children standing nearby. In that critical moment, without a second thought for himself, Ethan pushed a younger child out of harm's way and was struck by the car himself. The world froze as his body fell to the ground. Children screamed, teachers and parents ran toward him, and the entire village rushed to the hospital. For hours, the doctors fought to save him. By fortune, Ethan's life was spared, but his body suffered serious injuries. He lay in a hospital bed for weeks. This became a moment of reflection for everyone. The boy who people once saw as weak and burdensome had risked his life to save another. The very same villagers who used to pity him now stood outside the hospital day and night, praying for him. Children brought flowers and handmade cards. Elders prayed for him from both the Quran and the Bible. Ethan's mother's tears never seemed to stop, yet within them was now a spark of pride. She said, "My son has shown without speaking what many who can speak could never do." This accident became a turning point in Ethan's journey. He realized that every action of his was a lamp of light for others. He decided to transform his silence into an even greater strength. Now he was not just an example, he was a living hero, a reminder that sacrifice speaks louder than words. That painful moment was not an end, but a new beginning, a place where suffering and sacrifice merged to make Ethan far greater than he himself could ever have imagined. Ethan's body had not yet fully healed from the accident, but his heart had grown bigger and brighter than ever before. After returning home from the hospital, villagers visited him every day. Some children shared their stories, elders prayed for him, and others simply sat quietly, drawing strength from his presence. For the first time, Ethan realized that his life was not just his own, it was tied to the light in other people's hearts. Time passed, and Ethan finally returned to school. The moment he stepped into the classroom, children gathered around him. To them, he was no longer just a quiet boy, he was a hero. Teachers, too, began to use his bravery as an example for others. But within Ethan, a new struggle had begun. He knew he had dreams of his own, but he also felt that the greatest success was to give up one's happiness for the sake of others. One day, the school announced a drawing competition. Ethan had loved sketching since childhood, and his heart leapt with excitement. At last, he could put his inner world into colors and shapes. But that same day, his close friend Sam faced a crisis. Sam's father had lost his job, their home was under strain, and Sam didn't even have money to buy books, let alone take part in the competition. Ethan quietly handed over the little savings he had. His mother had given him that money to buy colored pencils, but now it was in Sam's hands. Shocked, Sam asked, "But what about your dream? What about the competition?" Ethan only smiled and wrote on his notebook, "My dream is that you don't give up. My happiness is only real if you succeed." That moment became a lesson in sacrifice, of giving up one's own desires for someone else's needs. Sam bought his books, studied hard, and the following year won the award for Best Student. When he stood on stage to accept the honor, he said before everyone, "This success isn't mine. It belongs to Ethan because he gave up his happiness for me." The hall fell silent. People looked at each other in awe. The same boy they once called weak had shown them the true meaning of strength, not in voice, not in body, but in the sacrifice of the heart. Ethan felt peace within. He had not won the drawing competition, but he had gained something far greater than any trophy, the happiness of another. That sacrifice became his true identity. He had learned that sometimes giving up your own happiness for someone else brings a kind of peace that no worldly victory can ever offer. Through sacrifice and silent courage, Ethan had carved out a special place in people's hearts. The boy once thought weak had now become a source of strength and hope for others, yet Ethan never claimed importance for himself. Quietly, he kept helping others, soothing their wounds and supporting their dreams. As time passed, the villagers slowly began to realize that there was nothing ordinary about Ethan's character. He was no longer the boy people pitied. He had become a lantern, lighting up the lives around him. One day, the school held a grand ceremony to honor the best student. The hall was packed, buzzing with excitement. The teacher walked onto the stage and said, "Today, we are giving this award to a student who has not only worked hard, but has become an example for others through sacrifice and courage. This child has shown us all that true strength does not come from the body, but from the heart." Whispers spread through the crowd. Who could it be? Many thought it must be Sam, who had been excelling in his studies. But then the teacher smiled and declared, "This honor belongs to Ethan." The hall fell silent. Then, in the next breath, applause erupted, thunderous, unstoppable, echoing through the room like a storm. People were surprised, yet deeply moved, that Ethan was finally being recognized for who he truly was. Ethan walked slowly toward the stage. His hands trembled, but his eyes glowed with light. The teacher placed the medal around his neck and said warmly, "This is your first recognition, Ethan. You have proven to everyone that even the quietest soul can be the greatest hero." Tears welled up in many eyes. Sam stood at the front, clapping the hardest. Ethan's mother wept with joy, her heart whispering prayers of gratitude. For Ethan, this was the most precious moment of his life. It was the first true acknowledgement that his sacrifices, his courage, and his silent perseverance had changed the hearts of those around him. He was no longer just a boy, he was a guide, a light, and an example to follow. A new chapter in Ethan's life began the moment he realized he was no longer alone. The boy once seen as weak was slowly finding his way into people's hearts. His quiet service and selfless spirit began to open doors he never thought possible. Some young boys from the village, who had only watched Ethan from afar before, now began to draw closer. They had come to see the depth of love and care within his heart. One day, Sam introduced Ethan to a few of his friends. They sat together, played games, and laughed. Though Ethan could not speak, his smile and the honesty in his gestures cast a spell on them all. Soon, this small gathering became Ethan's greatest strength. No longer did he rely only on his mother and Sam. He now had an entire circle standing by his side. These friends learned to understand his silent language. Sometimes they read his hand movements, and other times they simply looked into his eyes to know what he felt. One day, the friends decided they would help turn Ethan's dream into reality. They organized a small program in the village where children and elders all gathered. The event, arranged through Sam and the others, placed Ethan at the center. For the first time, Ethan felt that his dreams were not his alone. This power of friendship became both his shield and his wings. Whenever anyone dared to call him weak, his friends would step forward, raising their voices for him. They began to share his story with others, spreading his light far and wide. In Ethan's heart, a new courage stirred. He thought, maybe God didn't give me the gift of speech, but He gave me friends who can turn even my silence into a voice. This was a turning point in Ethan's journey, the moment he finally felt whole. Friendship had taught him that dreaming alone is never enough. True companions are what turn dreams into reality. For Ethan, true peace in life came from seeing joy on other people's faces. He knew he could never make grand speeches or bold declarations, but he could win hearts through small acts of kindness. That became his true strength. Whenever someone's water pot broke in the village, Ethan would quietly bring them another. If an elder needed to go to the market, he would walk beside them, carrying their load. When children fell while playing, he comforted them with his gentle smile and kindness. At first, people thought these were just ordinary gestures. But over time, they began to realize that these small deeds left a powerful mark on their hearts. The atmosphere of the village started to change. People became softer, more caring, and more willing to help each other. Ethan's silent service taught everyone that you don't need powerful words or great strength to change someone's life. Pure intentions and small sacrifices are enough. By easing someone's pain or lightening their burden, he lit a lamp that pushed away darkness. Sam would often say, "Friends, Ethan is showing us that service doesn't require a voice, it requires a heart." This truth touched everyone deeply. Soon, other young people in the village began joining Ethan in these small acts of service. This path of service turned his quiet life into a shining light for all. Ethan's small acts had now grown into great stories. In every corner of the village, people spoke of him. Children saw him as their hero, elders blessed him, and young men wished to serve like him. One day, the village chief gathered everyone and said, "We are proud that among us lives a true hero who lives for others. From today, Ethan will be called the savior of the village." The crowd erupted in claps and cheers. But Ethan only smiled and lowered his head. In his heart, he knew that even if people saw him as a hero, the real purpose was never fame, it was service. He raised his hand, asking for silence, and wrote on his small slate, "I am not a hero. A hero is the one who gives their time, their joy, and their comfort for others. If I have done something, it is only a small part. The true heroes are all of us, when we stand as support for each other." As people read his words, their eyes filled with tears. An old man said, "Child, your humility is your greatest greatness." Ethan turned away from fame, but this refusal made him even greater. Now people remembered not only his deeds, but also his humility. He taught everyone that true success lies in never letting praise overtake your heart and in making service your true identity. One evening, disaster struck the village. After heavy rains in the nearby mountains, a violent surge of water rushed down, threatening the homes along the riverbank. Children screamed, women prayed, and men tried to block the flood, but the current was too strong. Ethan stood among the crowd, his heart trembling like a blade. He knew that if nothing was done, many lives would be lost. At the edge of the village was a small bridge about to collapse. If it broke, the water would pour straight into the homes. While everyone else stepped back in fear, Ethan chose to step forward. He ran toward the bridge. Quickly, he wrote on his slate and handed it to a child. "I am going to save the bridge. If I don't return, tell everyone my only purpose was to protect them." Tears filled the child's eyes, but Ethan's courage only grew firmer. He reached the raging waters, fighting against the roaring storm. With his bare hands, he pulled ropes and logs together, trying to hold the bridge in place. Again and again, the flood tried to sweep him away, but he ignored his own life, determined only to save others. At last, some of the young men rushed to join him. Together, they fought for hours to secure the bridge. Finally, the danger passed and the village homes were saved. People wept with joy, hugging each other tightly. When they turned toward the bridge, Ethan was sitting on the ground exhausted. His clothes were drenched, his hands torn and bleeding, but his eyes shone with peace. Villagers ran to him. Some called him a hero, others a savior. But on Ethan's lips was only a silent smile. That day, everyone learned the meaning of true bravery, when a person is willing to risk their own life for the sake of others. Without uttering a word, Ethan gave a lesson that remained carved in their hearts forever. After the disaster, the village people spoke for days about Ethan's bravery. The child who had shown his slate to everyone kept repeating wherever he went, "He cannot speak, but he gave everything for us." People's views began to change. They no longer saw Ethan as weak or silent, but as a strong human being. Those who had once laughed at him now stood before him ashamed, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from their hearts. One day, the elders of the village gathered everyone together. Ethan was seated in the middle. The same teacher who had once set an example of patience and courage in his childhood was also there. In front of everyone, an elder said, "In our lives, we have seen many brave people, but today we have learned the real lesson of humanity. Ethan has shown us that a voice is not a person's identity. True identity is the strength of the heart." Hearing these words, the crowd burst into applause. Tears rolled down many eyes. Women and children surrounded Ethan, while young men bent to kiss his feet. For the first time, Ethan felt deeply that even his silence was a language, one that reached every heart. This moment was not just a lesson for the village, but for humanity itself. Everyone realized that true victory is not fame, power, or wealth. It is sacrifice for others. Sacrifice heals wounds, changes hearts, and keeps humanity alive. From that day on, a new way of life took root in the village. People began helping each other, the divide between young and old faded, and all came to believe that if one silent boy could change hearts, then they too could change the world. That was the true victory of humanity. After the accident and his sacrifice, Ethan's life entered a new chapter. Once he was just an ordinary boy, seen as weak and silent, but now he had become a light for everyone. His inner strength and selflessness had lit a lamp in every heart of the village. At night, when people sat in their homes, they remembered Ethan's silent smile. His sacrifice and spirit of service became a story repeated by both young and old. Children, while playing, would say to each other, "If we want to be like Ethan, we must never leave anyone alone." This thought began changing the youth as well. Those who once chased after fame and wealth now started thinking about living for others. The elders also admitted that Ethan had removed the darkness within them. That light which no one had ever noticed in him before was now guiding them all. One day, a fair was held in the center of the village. People came to show their talents. But the biggest crowd gathered at a small corner where children had presented Ethan's story through drawings and writings. The pictures showed the moments when he risked his life for others, when he became someone's support for the first time, and when he turned his silence into the language of service. At the end of the fair, an elder said, "Today there is light in all our hearts, and that light was given to us by a silent boy." This proves that hope can shine even in the darkest of nights. Ethan listened quietly. Tears filled his eyes, but his heart was at peace. He knew his journey was not over yet. This light would carry him beyond the village, to places where the darkness was greater and the thirst for hope even stronger. Thus, Ethan's name became a symbol. He was not just a lamp himself, but a journey of light, erasing darkness and awakening hope in every heart. Ethan's life was no longer just a story, it had become a lesson. He had never dreamed of fame nor chased after people's praise, yet time placed him in a position where every eye was on him. The remarkable thing was that he had achieved it all without a single word. No speeches, no grand promises, only silent service and a pure heart. The villagers often said, "A hero is not the one who speaks loudly before everyone, but the one who quietly lives for others." Ethan was the living proof of this truth. He had turned his weakest moments into strength, his silence into a weapon, and the light of his heart into hope for others. When children sat with him, they noticed a strange sparkle in his eyes. He could not express himself in words, but his smile, his way of being, and his presence alone gave people courage. One little child once told him, "When I grow up, I want to live for others the way you do." The elders would use him as an example. This is the true hero, one who lives not for himself, but for others. As time passed, Ethan's story spread beyond the village into nearby towns. People came to meet him, to hear about his sacrifices and service, and were amazed at how someone could say so much without speaking at all. The truth was simple. To be a hero, one doesn't need great power or wealth. A true hero is the one who ignites hope in people's hearts, even if his voice never reaches the world. Ethan was recognized by everyone, not through titles or grand awards, but through the depths of their hearts. He was the true hero, the one who was recognized without words. And that was the story of the silent hero. Ethan showed us that real heroes don't always speak loud. Sometimes their actions speak louder than words. His silence carried a message of love, sacrifice, and humanity. If this story touched your heart, please share it with your friends and family. And remember to subscribe, like, and comment below. Tell us what lesson you learned from Ethan's journey. Stay tuned, because more inspiring stories are coming soon.